Hello, everyone. I think I'm going to call this podcast episode Embracing God's Love Among Our Struggles. Uh, Now, by the time you all hear this episode, members of the Unlocking Greatness community would have already heard this whole thing because we actually have a live workshop session today. Actually, in just a few minutes, we have a session. But I decided to record this beforehand because I really feel like it's just that powerful. And I'm just going to talk about just one or 2 points that they're actually getting ready to go through. But this is just really important. So let's think about King David. King David in Psalm 119, you all can turn over to Psalm 119. There's something about him that I read before, but I really didn't pay much attention to. King David said in Psalm 119, verse 71, he said, "It was good for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees. The law from your mouth is more precious to me than thousands of pieces of silver and gold." Who in the world talks like that? What in the world did he mean saying it was good for me to have been afflicted? And so I've been, you all may not know this, but I've been meditating quite a bit on Psalm 119, just kind of going through a few passages at a time each day. And I don't know if you all know what was all going on in King David's life. I mean, it was just, not only, did he go through that whole situation with Bathsheba, but he went through some situations with his kids. He went through basically his own army really contemplating taking taking him out, right? He went through betrayal. He went through even King Saul coming after him. And he was just going through a really, really, really long season in his life of adversity, suffering, disappointments. It was just a lot of ups and downs. And this was just one of those peak moments when it was just so much coming at him at one time. In fact, in verse 28, and this is in Psalm 119, he said, "My soul is weary with sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word." So he said his soul was weary with sorrow, and he was asking God to strengthen him. He said in verse 34, "Give me understanding." And he just went on to talk about in verse 39, "Take away the disgrace that I dread." It was just a lot going on in his life. But why did he say, I just want to focus on just this one part. Why did he say in verse 71, "It was good for me to be afflicted that I might learn from your decrees"? Why on earth did he say that? And then he says in verse 75, and this is something that really just got me really, I was just tearing up about this because I was disappointed in something. And when I read this, it's as if the bricks just kind of fell off of my chest, because what I got from this is I understand now why so much about David is written in the Bible, because he trusted in God's love no matter what he went through. It's as if he knew that he knew who God really was. And even in the pain and the affliction and all the things that he was going through, he still had the audacity to say to God, "It was good for me." In other words, I know you're drawing me closer to you. I know you're going to deliver me from this. So in verse 75, he says, "I know, O Lord, that your laws are righteous." And listen to this. In faithfulness, you have afflicted me." Let me read that one more time. It's the same David in Psalm 119. "I know, O Lord, that your laws are righteous. In faithfulness, you have afflicted me." And then he just goes on to talk about in verse 77, "Let your compassion come to me that I may live, for your law is my delight." In verse 62, he says, At midnight I rise to give you thanks." In verse 55, "In the night I remember your name, O Lord, and I will keep your way." I'm just really blown away by David's heart, that who talks like that? Who talks like that and says, "In faithfulness you've afflicted me"? And who talks like that and says, "It was good for me to have been afflicted so that I might learn your decrees"? You see the relationship that he had with God and the way that he saw God in all of it. He was still going through. Because if you read, just take your time and read through all Psalm 119. I mean, he was going through. He's like, "Take away my disgrace, take away my," you know what I mean? He's talking about the enemies that are after him and how his name, how he's been put to shame, and "Do not let me be put to shame." He was going through. But he had the audacity to sit there and in essence thank God for what he went through. I said to God this morning, I get up a little bit earlier in the morning to pray and just meditate, and I sit in my living room and I read my Bible. And I said, "God, I thank you for the opportunity to grow. Thank you. Now I know you may not be in a position to say this. Some of you are, and some of you are not. But literally, this is what I said. I said, God, I thank you for all of the times where I was discouraged or in any way disappointed by results or um, dealing with the adversities in my life. I said, God, I thank you because you are a good father. And I know that you love me. I know that you love me. But I thank you for allowing me to go through the things you allowed me to go through. Now, hear me out, you guys, because some of you may be like, well, you don't know what I go through. So I'm not saying, I'm not in any way telling you how you need to think or feel, or even how you need to view this passage, to be honest with you. Because I understand there's situations that happen in life, and I know right now, especially across this world, there's so many horrendous things going on. So take it with a grain of salt and take whatever you can take from this that will encourage you. So I'm speaking for me, for my life, okay? So just take it that way. But I said to God, I said, I thank you for everything you've allowed me to go through, because I see in each of those cases you were drawing me closer to you. And I also see how you turned around and worked those situations out in my life. And I said, God, you are a good father. You're so good. Now, for me, that's hard to say sometimes, right? Especially when I think about the times I go and visit my son's gravesite, right? And we won't even get started through some of the other things. If you have a copy of my book, Necessary, you already know a whole lot of my story. So for me to be able to say those words is just like, are you kidding me? But look at David. Do you understand how precious that is to God to know? It reminds me of the book of Job. If you all have time, read through Job. Read through the very last chapter in Job. Everything that Job went through, which I don't wish that for anybody, right? Everything that Job went through, and at the end, when God blessed his life more in the latter, God blessed his life more than what he had before. Everything that Job went through. So when I think about David, this is something that came to mind this morning. That's why I kind of teared up a little bit. I just thought, oh, this is why so much of him is written about in the Bible. He had a genuine relationship with God, and he knew who God was. And even though some things don't make sense what you may be going through, let me speak for myself because I don't want to put this out there on you. Even though many things have not made sense what I went through, tremendous amounts of ups and downs and adversities and sufferings and disappointments at different times in my life. I've had a lot of victories too, let me make that clear. But I'm speaking to that part. Even though I've been through tremendous things, I thank you, God. You are still a good father. I thank you for everything you've allowed me to go through. You've transformed my heart. You've drawn me closer to you. I desire to be in your secret place. I desire to seek you. I desire to honor you in my life. And I trust and know because you are a good father, you are always going to show up and not only deliver me, but make a way out. May your name be honored in my life, my entire life. No matter what I go through, I thank you for it all. There's a passage in the Bible, and I can't find it right now, but it talks about should we not praise him in the bad times as well, or only in the good times? And there's a chapter I wrote about in my book, Necessary. One of the chapters is called, I think I titled it When God Says No, something like that. That's the title I gave it. When God says no, can he still be your God, even when the answer is no? So I'm going to end with these two passages. And again, for the members of the Unlocking Greatness community, we're going to have a whole amazing workshop session today. I think today's workshop session is called New Year, New Mindset. And we're going to have a good time with this. So by the time this podcast airs, members of the Unlocking Greatness community, you guys may feel like, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. Well, it's because I decided to record it. But anyway, there's another passage or two in Romans 5:3. This is a passage I'm going to share with them today in our meeting. In verse 3, it says, not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character. And it says, and character, hope. Now, I really did not used to like that passage at all. But now there's something that's beginning to make sense to me because it seems kind of rude and kind of insensitive to even put the word rejoice and suffering in the same sentence, doesn't it? Right? But then when I look at David's heart and I look at all that man was going through and I look at his response, it was good for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees. Now I'm looking at him through a different set of eyes, and I'm saying, what he's saying is, I love you enough, God, to trust even when you allow me to be disappointed or go through adversities, because I know that you are the God who saves. And I love you enough to know that even in my worst moments, you're drawing me closer to you. And that's why he's able to say, this is, in my opinion, it was good for me to have been afflicted. Not that I like what happened, let me just be clear, but it was good for me that I went through this so that I may then draw closer to you. There's another passage in Hebrews 12:10. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians. Let me go to Hebrews. Sometimes I have a hard time finding Hebrews because it's right around Ephesians. Hang on. Let me get to my Hebrews. Let's go to Hebrews. What did I say? Did I say chapter 12? So Hebrews chapter 12. Now this passage may make a little bit more sense. Hebrews chapter 12 in verse 10. Our fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplined us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. My God, that's so true. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness, and get this, and peace for those who have been trained by it. That's the part I want to end on. And I'm giving you guys just a little snippet of the lesson I'm actually about to do in a little bit. We're about to have a live workshop session, and we're going to break out and work in teams and really have a really good time going through a lot of this and getting our vision and goals ready for this year. So I'm giving you guys just like a tiny little piece of it. But I'm going to close out with this. It says, later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace. It seemed like discipline and peace shouldn't even be in the same sentence. It produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. What do you mean trained by it? There's something I'm supposed to learn in this? I know I'm tearing up a little bit because I'm thinking through some of the things I've been through. What do you mean trained by it? And then it began to dawn on me this morning when I was sitting before in my living room and looking out of the window. Oh my goodness, because I know who God is and I know that he loves me. He's a good God. So no matter what I go through, and there's a passage, if I had time, I would have turned to it, that talks about the righteous man, how he doesn't fear anything. He doesn't fear bad news. He doesn't fear anything happening. And I'm like, how is that possible that you don't fear that? Well, it's because you know who God is and you trust him and you love him. So in everything that we go through, we look for, and I talk about this in Necessary, I think in chapter maybe 2 or so, chapter in there called Through the Fire. In everything that we go through, we look for the gold. We look for the refinement process that's going to come out of that. God, I don't like this. I don't like this season that I'm going through right now. I don't even understand why you're allowing me to go through this season right now. It just doesn't make sense. But you know what, God? I trust you enough to know that you love me. As my mama taught me before she passed away, she said, baby, the secret is to praise God in the middle of the storm. I'm going to praise you in the middle of this storm. I'm making a decision. I'm going to praise you in it. You still get the glory, even when it makes no sense. As David says, it was good for me to have been afflicted. Do you understand what that does to God's heart? Think about that for a moment. Think about Job, what he went through. And in the beginning, when God was talking to Satan and said that there's no one like him, have you considered him? Do you understand what that does? To go through moments you don't even understand and get, and the pain is so deep. And I'm sorry that I'm crying right now, you guys, because I'm thinking about my son, but the pain is so deep, it just doesn't make sense. But can you imagine the Father who loves you, how he will rescue you and lift you and honor his name in your life and produce gold from that moment? Do you understand what that does, that you can be going through something like that and you still say, God, I love you. You are a good Father. All your ways are good. First of all, who does that? Second of all, who has that level of faith? But do you understand God's character and how good he is? That kind of pressure on his integrity, and I'm going to use this word in a way that I pray people don't take it the wrong way, because some people, are just like that, but I'm going to use this word anyway. That kind of pressure on God's integrity almost forces him to show himself up in your life. because he honors his integrity, his word. It forces him to show up because he cannot lie. So can you imagine? Now I get why David is talked about. So I'm like, the whole Bible is just so much about David in here. Study David. Who says that? Grateful for the adversity. And if you keep on reading, he goes on to praising and glorifying God, talking about, I seek your face. I love you. I meditate. I get up in the middle of the night praising you. My mama was so right. I thank God for my mama. I thank God for those last words she spoke to me when she was telling me, baby, the secret to life is to always praise God in the middle of the storms. That's how you praise your way out. Anyway, you guys got me crying. I love you. I actually got to go get ready now to actually talk to the members of the Unlocking Greatness community about this, which, by the way, you all are more than welcome to join. You can go to unlockinggreatness.com to sign up. I love to get a chance to meet you all on a Zoom call so you can be a part of these workshop sessions that we have. But that's just a little bit of what I'm about to talk about with them. But I love you. I love you. I love you. Be encouraged, my brothers and sisters. You're listening to Unlocking Greatness podcast with Zenja Glass.